Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex. Once again, this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Todd McFarlane Day, and we are looking at Infinity Inc. number 25, cover dated April 1986 from DC Comics. This is the last issue that I own of Infinity Inc. that Todd McFarlane did, so starting next episode, we'll be moving on to the stuff he did on Batman Year 2, where I think we start to see a lot more of some of the tropes that McFarlane will develop and keep as he moves along throughout his career. These Infinity Inc. issues is still, I'll repeat, to me, McFarlane kind of doing DC house style and just making sure he can, hold a steady job and prove his mettle and doing monthly comics, right? And he's being paired with inkers, obviously, who help, push that DC house style. So that's why, when you look at this, you probably won't, it doesn't scream McFarlane, and it does look like a regular kind of mid-1980s DC comic. There are a few telltale signs if you know where to look. So a few things of the tropes, the McFarlane tropes I like to point out. The hands, for sure, right? I've talked about how here they're not quite as exaggerated, but you know what I'm talking about. On Spawn, eventually his hands are going to get very kind of and mangled and stuff, which is cool for some of the characters, for Spawn, for Violator, monsters and stuff. And I never really quite understood where McFarlane got that, and I've probably mentioned it before, but until I saw him in interviews where if you notice the way he talks and he puts his hands out, it's a lot like the way he draws them and the way his characters, flail their hands about. So kind of interesting, right? Adds weight to that argument that artists tend to draw themselves, even in maybe in the body language, in the hands, and in the facial features. But yeah, so if we look at this, not much McFarlane to kind of seek out, but I do feel like this pose here overall is fairly McFarlane-ish, if I can put it that way. Just something about it, slightly awkward but fun, I guess is how I'd say. We mentioned the hands, and the only other thing that would really point it out to me is the way the mouth, even though it's in negative space here, the way the mouth is drawn here. If you saw yesterday's episode, the way Liefeld draws this kind of mouth as well, I find is akin to McFarlane. They both use kind of that same angle. I feel like maybe Liefeld lifted that a little bit from McFarlane. I could be wrong. So there you go. We're going to crack this one open, have a look inside. So as you can tell here, we'll go through the credits real quick. Roy and Dan Thomas, writers. Tom McFarlane, penciler. Tony DeZuniga, I'm not quite sure. Inker. David Cody Weiss, letterer, and Carl Gafford, the colorist. Don't mind that. That's the street sweeper that's going by outside my window, if you can hear that. So we've got a very kind of pedestrian shot here, establishing shot, all the characters around the table here. From what I've seen of Infinity Inc., I'm not really interested in the story much. I have these issues because McFarlane drew them. That's pretty much the only reason. There seems to be a lot of just the same kind of shots and team shots, and he is giving us the old whammy here, the old Kirby of a splash page here, even though not that interesting, and a double splash here, I guess somewhat more interesting. And if I'm not mistaken, this is still during Crisis on Infinite Earths, and that's why we're getting kind of these Golden Age characters here, meeting up with our modern-day Infinity Inc. characters. So not much McFarlane to speak of, except, of course, for the layouts and the design elements, which, he's talked about how he would do anything to try to make the page more interesting, because, as you can tell, Roy Thomas was really giving him a lot of dialogue-heavy pages here, right? And of course, when you're new and you're just kind of, starting out, you're not going to argue with the writer and ask him to change things, right? So you kind of adapt to what's being asked of you. Another kind of McFarlane hand here. I mean, I could swear I've seen Spawn in this exact kind of pose. Starting to see maybe a hint or, the beginnings of McFarlane using those capes, right? Really making them big and exaggerating. This is pretty big. Still seems pretty soft, though. He'll go really, I guess, angular eventually with Spawn, but a little bit before that, right? With like some of the stuff he did on Spider-Man with the Hobgoblin. I think he was working it out, and it came to its eventual kind of logical conclusion with Spawn and the origami kind of folded paper look. I do think a lot of the, for what I think of the artwork being very house style and kind of boring and pedestrian, I will say McFarlane is really working hard here with his layouts, right? And he's doing some interesting things. I will agree with him that, the things he's doing are making those pages more interesting. There's a McFarlane hand. You can spot them every once in a while. I'll point them out if I see them. You know, even something like this, I feel like the color maybe could have helped a bit more to do that transition, make it be a little bit smoother. But, you know, not in any way typical McFarlane line work, right? But the design idea, I remember McFarlane would use this stuff where the shadows wouldn't actually be shadows and they would fade into something else. I feel like he's starting to work out that idea here. Some of these are hilarious here. I think that's Metamorpho. Like, no way does that resemble a McFarlane face. That's the inker doing most of the work there. So some more interesting designs. This big circle, you know, all this stuff I find very, very enjoyable. It does make the page interesting. The various Earths, right, representing Crisis on Infinite Earths at that moment. If you know about DC history, you know about that classic kind of miniseries, right? Rebooting all of DC's history into one, hopefully coherent universe. It didn't work for very long, but, you know, they tried. Yeah. So much dialogue. So many of these shots. This is what I mean. Like, all through Infinity Inc. Hey, here's a shot with all these characters just kind of standing around and talking. Not a lot of actual action going on in these comics. The cosmic bits here are incidental, again, because of Crisis on Infinite Earths, right? This, to me, seems very much in the composition of McFarlane kind of thing, right? The character here on a vertical, right? And then some inset panels. Stuff that he would carry on, you know, with him through the rest of his DC work, Marvel, and onto Image. This is just me, but the fact that the ship is going to the left should probably be going to the right. That's just a thing you tend to do because we read from left to right, so that's an odd choice. I mean, I don't know how horrible it is in the storytelling. I don't think it changes that much, but it's just something you would avoid generally. But who knows? Rules are made to be broken sometimes. So yeah, this sequence is cool because you got these giant sharks here. I don't know how some of the sharks look pretty good. I mean, this one's pretty good. I won't complain. They're just giant. Good sequence. I assume drawing sharks is fun. If you get a bit of reference, you know, lots of round organic shapes, probably not too complicated. Yeah, see, this shark I don't find is as successful here. Some of McFarlane's tricks, right, for creating those different levels of depth, right? So you got the cape coming towards us, the foot over it, you know, these kind of design elements, which are, I think her name is Obsidian, trying to help them out with some poles to hang on to. This guy, you know, everything's overlapping. Not quite sure what's going on here. That's kind of a unfortunate angle there. That's a cool shot there, right? We get a typical McFarlane profile with none of the McFarlane detail. This, if I didn't know McFarlane drew this book, I would have no idea that's him. Maybe the design elements a little bit, but still, just, yeah. The finish has, as you can see in all these pages, has nothing to do with what we know or associate with McFarlane. It's really that deal of all those artists, you know, once McFarlane kind of, you know, got Liefeld to do it and pushed all the other artists to kind of ink themselves, right? So I think they became more successful when they started inking themselves. Even Jim Lee, but then eventually he kind of settled in with Scott Williams, who does a great job on him. You know, their partnership has lasted all these years. So I do like the sequence here with the shark. I think it's very inventive, you know, in how they show the violence and the gore. It's, you know, it's just symbolic enough here, I guess is how I describe it, that it's not too overt and obvious as McFarlane would make it later, and then he'd run into issues with, you know, the famous Juggernaut in Spider-Man 16, those kind of things that would push him eventually to leave Marvel. But here he's finding an interesting kind of graphic way of showing it with, you know, without alerting the censors, I guess is how I'd put it. And of course you're gonna have to have a shark guy, so there he is. And I don't, you know, I really prefer the sharks that we got prior to this. I do not really like this shark design here. The spindly arms and stuff. It's just, yeah, it's very kind of generic in 80s, I guess. Just, I feel that could have been way more interesting. Maybe he's trying to make it different because most characters, you know, end up looking like, there's one in DC Comics, right? I forget his name. And then there's the character in Savage Dragon. I believe his name's Mako. So I find those are way more successful, you know, shark dude character designs than what we're seeing here. I don't know if I'd even think that was a shark if I didn't know. I'd probably think it was a dinosaur of some sort. So there you have it. Can a dead man die again? I guess so if they made a miniseries about it. And we're getting a bit of a preview here, which, funny enough, when I look at this does look a lot more, at least some of it, like McFarlane to me. But I don't have that issue, and we're not going to be looking at it, so this is the only kind of look you're going to get. So stay tuned for next week for McFarlane Day. We're going to be looking at, since this is done with Infinity Inc., I think I mentioned it before, I'll mention it again, we're going to be looking at some Batman Year 2 stuff that Todd McFarlane did, and we'll start seeing a lot more of the tropes that will become, you know, the ones that are 100% associated with McFarlane and his style. So thank you for checking out this episode. I appreciate it very much. Please go out there and like and subscribe if it's something you're willing to do and you enjoy what you're seeing. I hope everyone out there has a great day.
Like! Subscribe! Like! Subscribe!
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.